been 4 months since the monsters have taken over the quiet holiday island. A family of survivors live their days in absolute silence, being careful not to alert the vicious monsters that hunt and kill on sound. With wife Yiling pregnant and about to give birth, husband Bolming, his niece Yina, and a couple of other survivors do their best to fortify the remaining villa on the island, but a series of mistakes puts them all in very grave danger. You know what, I really liked the first A Quiet Place film. I wasn't too keen on the second one, but then I went back to liking the series for the third movie, and while technically they are sci-fi films, they have elements of horror in them. And would you believe, this is one of the only horror series that's actually permitted for release in Chinese cinema, and my guess it's because it's got to do with aliens and not ghosts. Now it makes sense then that the Chinese would attempt to create their own version of this film, but if you're looking for the quality of storytelling and world building of the original, then you're going to be very disappointed. The first problem occurs with the lack of an actual storyline. The movie only very briefly provides some backstory about it all happened, and that's done by using just a couple of lines of dialogue, which is very rare in this film. There's actually not too much dialogue in the film at all. Now, to get the full backstory of the film, I actually had to go online to read the movie film's listing. And even then, that raised more questions than it actually answered. Now, the survivors in this film utilize an abandoned water theme park, specifically a waterfall, when they want to make sound. This is where Yilin eventually gives birth, and you'll recognize this element also from A Quiet Place. The confusing element here is that the waterfall relies on electricity to run, and generating electricity makes a lot of noise. So how is it that there is still electricity there that's powering this waterfall? And that's the biggest mistake any filmmaker makes when they create a film or base a film based on a particular set of rules. It's the audience gets frustrated when the movie doesn't follow those same rules it set out. So why do they need to whisper when they're making so much noise walking along a gravel road? Are they actually using recognized sign language in the film, or are they just waving their arms and hands around and hoping that the other person can actually recognize what they're telling them? Now, we, as the audience, get the luxury of subtitles, even in places where nothing actually happens and the filmmaker feels that they need to tell the audience something. But the characters in this movie don't get that luxury. Now let's talk about the creature effects. They are interesting, to say the least. Now, they're not aliens like the series that this movie is clearly based on, but instead they're just generic creatures who seem to have an abundance of very sensitive ears on their face or head or something like that. Now, they're very clearly cheaply made monster creations that barely even fit the scenes that they're placed in. And just like in A Quiet Place, they're defeated or at least weakened in the same way. Now I know, it's really hard to stop comparing this movie to A Quiet Place, and it gets even harder to do it when the movie copies one of the most recognizable scenes from that first movie, and that is when the character steps on a nail in the staircase. And part of me just hates this scene. I hate this scene in total in both films because, one, how is there such a long nail on a staircase? And two, how has no one ever seen that nail before they've stepped on it? It makes no sense. And then the movie just ends. It's a ridiculously short 62 minutes when it should have been at least 85. I wanted the movie to tell me the actual backstory about what was going on. I needed to know a bit more about what was going on in the world. And I also wanted to know how all of these characters seemed to be connected to each other. There was none of that. More importantly, I needed an ending that I could remember, because here I am just a mere few hours after watching this film and I can barely remember how the film ended. That's not a good sign. Maybe that's more to do with my memory retention than anything else. Anyway, using my patent pending ghost rating, which stands for great horror or stupid trash, this movie only gets 2 ghosts. And look, it only gets that because it's such a brazen attempt at trying to replicate the formula that is A Quiet Place. and using all of those same elements. It does an admirable job for a 50th of the budget, but it's certainly not a film that you're going to be recommending to a lot of people to watch if they like The Quiet Place. If you did like A Quiet Place and you're curious about what a knockoff would be like, certainly check this out. But you're going to be left with far more questions than answers, and you're going to be very frustrated by what's going on in the movie, but you're also going to like a lot of the scenes that they've replicated from the original film. Anyway, have you seen Strange Island Beasts Within? I think that's what this movie's called. It's got a very odd title. And it is streaming on Chinese web services, iQIYI. If you did want to watch it, it is available there. It has English subtitles only because it barely has any dialogue in the film. So there is a little bit of subtitles going on there so you can follow along with the film, but it's a fairly easy movie to follow along. Anyway, I am the Artie Dance. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll catch you next time.